Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Adrian Lupola, and I'm the Network Solution Consultant here at OneSource Distributors. Today, we're going to be talking about industrial cybersecurity. To kind of let you know how the format's going to be running, we have Sergio Luna, who's assisting out in the chat. He's going to be answering any of your questions that you feel free to chat into us. The mics will all be muted, and at the very end of the presentation, we'll open up the mics to let you ask any questions in person. So without further ado, we're going to kick off the event, and we're going to touch on 5 key areas. The first is recent attacks of industrial control systems, followed by tamper detection, then secure my network infrastructure, and then content protection, and the last piece is access control and policy management. So to kick it off, we're going to be talking about recent attacks on the industrial control systems that have been taking place. So if many of you have been here with us at the Rockwell or OneSource cybersecurity or networking presentations, you're probably familiar with this chart. This is an ICF focus campaign attacks frequency chart. Going from the left side in 2010 up to 2017, you could see the attacks have increased dramatically, especially between 2016 and 2017. Also in 2010, the first attack that we had, the Stuxnet attack, this was a specific attack that came up on a USB key that kind of sneaker way netted its way into the industrial plant floor. This was targeting SCADA and PLCs, but you can see as you go across the spectrum up in 2016 and 17 that it's moved to more of an IT based attack, more ransomware, malware, and kind of spyware phishing attack campaigns. The reason for this, a lot of it is this IT OT. So IT is your clean IT enterprise space networks merging with industrial OT or operational technology networks. And this is key to note because you could see the drastic increase in between 2016 and 17. And one of the more recent attacks in 2021, the Florida Altamar water plant, this was a specific attack on the water plant using a secure kind of enterprise remote access application called TeamViewer. It was also involving shared passwords between the users, and the compromised system was a Windows 7 system, which even though it's 2021, that end of life for that system was January 14th of 2020. This has kind of moved forward into SolarWinds attack. This was, I don't know if you've heard about it, but SolarWinds is a network monitoring software. You can do some management through it too, but this kind of is developed for more of an enterprise IT space. But any of you out there that may be working a lot closer with your IT departments for your operational technology, you're going to start seeing that this is more catered for enterprise networks. So we do have some solutions in the OT. Reach out to me and I can help you out in that area. But these attacks were specific from Russian hackers. They were stealing data from multiple government agencies, cybersecurity and tech companies. And it brings up to something that kind of rings true, is very similar to termites and houses. I've heard the saying, it goes forward and with the cybersecurity is, it's not a matter of when you'll be compromised or if you'll be compromised, but a matter of when. So that's why we're here today. We're here to hopefully spark up a discussion. Feel free to reach out to us afterwards and we can kind of help you out with any methodologies and any kind of hardware or software solutions that might help you out on your cybersecurity journey. All right, you see that the hacker, who luckily was found out prior to them making these changes, but they were trying to change the sodium hydroxide from 100 parts to 11,100 parts in one of the water plants that was 15 miles away from where the Super Bowl was to be held and 2 days prior to it. So keep that in mind. Something really significant could have, happened or, come out of that. So luckily they were able to kind of stop it before it got moving. So what did they find out about this? The water plant left their doors wide open to hackers. It was a compromise on their SCADA system due to TeamViewer being used. TeamViewer it's being touted as an all-in-one solution for secure remote access. However, that's based on you having a good policy and procedure in there for having passwords. So if you're sharing passwords, or you don't have a password policy in there and you're using a secure platform like this, even that type of platform can be compromised. So what's at risk? We have loss of life, which definitely could have happened over there at the Ozamar water plant. Stolen intellectual property, production loss, unscheduled downtime, damaged equipment, environmental impacts, and brand. All of these can affect a company very negatively and possibly shut them down. So how do we start to combat these? What Rockwell recommends is the development of a holistic defense in depth security approach. So understanding that no single technology, no product or methodology can really in and itself save you from everything. So you want to get this full tiered, almost like an onion. You're going to have different tiers of security to kind of put up in there. And the reason for this is you put up enough roadblocks for this defense in depth, it's going to give you the ability to identify and delay the attacker. With this delay, hopefully with the other metrics you have in place, it's going to increase your time to kind of put up countermeasures to help eliminate or minimize any of the negative effects that that attacker might want to put out on your system. I've put out here on the left, you can see ISA, IEC. These are actually links you can click on. NIST, Department of Homeland Security. But ISA, IEC, this is a series standard. So the 62443, it's not one standard, it's a series of standards. This is what Rockwell uses, all three of these to kind of come through and create a full cybersecurity platform that they release out for you as a customer to use. It's been developed by ISA's 99 committee for IEC, and it's a framework that's going to help you address, mitigate security vulnerabilities out on your plant floor. Also NIST, the 882 revision 2, this is a guide on how to secure your industrial automated control system. So from your SCADA, your DCSs, or your PLCs, specifically, it's going to help provide an overview of a typical system topology, help you identify threats and vulnerabilities that might exist, and give some recommendations on countermeasures. And then also through Department of Homeland Security. I've actually been through the training, but they have a terrific training that's offered by the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. This is 301. It's an ICS Cert 301V and L training. This will actually contain, for the virtual, the 301V, it's 12 hours of online training, followed up by 5 days of lab training, where you actually have instructor-led, at the very end of the event, it'll go through a real-life scenario. So I've been through it. It's a terrific training that I'd highly recommend. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. And then moving further along on securing your automation and information, we're going to touch on 4 key areas. First is tamper detection. This is how you detect and record unwanted activity and modifications in an application. The solutions that we have out here to help you out are firmware digital signatures, auditing with FactoryTalk Asset Center, change detection and logging controllers, high integrity add-on instructions or AOIs, and the implementation of SIP security. SIP security is controlled by ODVA, and it pretty much is the implementation of certificates. So very similar to when you're out on the web and you're using HTTPS or secure socket layer and you're doing communications. It's the creation of certificates, shared keys, whether private or public, and the hash marking using HMAC. But you'll see it's in 3 of these 4 solutions that we have. Also, speaking about secure network infrastructure, the next area, this is where we control access to the network and detect unwanted access and activity. This is done through Rockwell's Converged Plant-Wide Ethernet that they co-developed with Cisco and Panduit. These are validated architectures, recommendations that we can give out through white papers and design implementation guides. There's also the full Stratix portfolio, from fully managed switches to lightly managed to unmanaged switches. Especially for security, really recommend getting, if not a fully managed switch, then something that's at least lightly managed, so it has that built-in security into it. Also network services and security. So if you need some assistance on that area, we have designs and implementations we can assist on. And then part of that Stratix portfolio is an actual firewall, not only a firewall, but a firewall with Cisco's deep packet inspection. So difference between deep packet inspection and traditional firewall is a firewall is going to block on something called tuple. It's 5 tuple. It's 5 areas. It's the IP address, MAC address, and that's the source and destination, as well as the port numbers and the protocols that are being used. But you can kind of think of this as a drawbridge. Once you give access, it's going to allow that traffic to go through. And if that traffic has been compromised kind of at a more finite layer, it won't see it, and it can affect your network. So we'll go into a little more detail a little later, but the Stratix 5950 can help out in the access areas or your cell area zones, along with firewalls. Also, we have SIP security. Next, we have the content protection. This is how do you protect the viewing and editing and use of specific pieces of control system. And you do this through logic source protection. And then finally, we have the access control and policy management. This is how you control who, what, where, and when access is allowed and to which applications and devices on your plant floor. This is done through data access control, factory talk security, as well as SIP security. So when we speak about products having this built-in security, you should really make sure your vendors build security into their products. This is something that Rockwell really kind of holds true to. They have a robust security development lifecycle. You can see everything here on the right, from the education, where we ensure people like myself and Sergio are on the line to help you. Also, there's trainings that we can go through to help you go and develop these applications for your industrial plants and in a secure environment. Also, through the designs, we have recommendations that we can give out. And more specifically with Rockwell, they've actually received the ISA IEC 62443-4-1 certification. And they got this through adopting a specific security development practice in both their products and system development processes. So this is really key to note. And then also for verify, this is where you have comprehensive testing and verify that the design and implementation meets guidelines such as 62443, the ISA IECs, and then releases. So when we talk about releases, you're looking at whether the release has actually been thoroughly verified and evaluated to make sure that it meets any kind of security review standards. And then also through to maintain. Maintain is actually, because standards are changing so much out there in technology, Rockwell wants to make sure that they have a continuous improvement approach to managing the policies and procedures out there. This will allow you as an organization to assess, update any security processes that you have more regularly, and help you build a true secure industrial plant floor. And then also with regards to respond. So if there are any kind of vulnerabilities found, Rockwell has a product security incident response team. They're going to be used to mitigate issues, and then after they mitigate the issues, when they hear about them, they're going to go and communicate their findings out to the customers. Next, we're going to touch on one of the software solutions, Factory Talk Asset Center. Factory Talk Asset Center will actually crawl your network and discover connected devices, computers, and then for some devices, maybe it couldn't detect due to them being offline or not connected to the network, like air-gapped. You have the ability to manually enter in data, but it's going to give you the ability to get an inventory or versions of your hardware, your firmware, and your software that are running out there on your plant. And then through something called Premier Integration, something I touched on last week at our industrial networking webinar, we have through add-on instructions, add-on profiles, faceplates, we have the ability to have automatic discovery, backup and compare, version control, notification, and search and reporting capabilities. And all of this is done through using Rockwell's SIP devices over Ethernet. This is how they scan it, as well as any devices that you might have SNMP capabilities like network switches, and any of your Windows-based PCs or workstations that are running software. So really great software. If you have any questions, let us know. We can go in more detail. Next, we're going to go and talk about tamper detection. So how do you detect, record unwanted activity and modifications to an application on your plant floor? We do this through a common security service like Factory Talk Security, also with the implementation of something called source protection. So Factory Talk Security, this is used to really help protect your controllers. It's going to protect your tags, as you can see in the slide, your routines, your add-on instructions, the modules. It's going to limit who can access the controller. It's going to also very similar to, I'd say, like Active Directory. When you log into a computer and you try to get authentication and go out and get access to files or folders, it's very similar to that. You stand this up and it's going to do this specifically for your control environment. And then down in the weeds at the device, we have source protection. So with source protection, it's going to give you the ability through password and source keys for legacy or through license base. This is the new security metric. It's going to give you the ability to limit access to the routines and add-on instructions. And then also not listed on this, but through managed switches, the Stratix managed switches and Cisco's identity service engine, you can also authenticate users and machines from accessing the controller out there on the network. This is supported in the Control Logix 5580, Compact Logix 5480, and 5380 controllers, you can see here at the bottom. Next, this is just a quick note of what does this dashboard for the Asset Center look like. As you can see here, this is the when. You can see on the left, when did they log in? Where on the network did they log in? Who was actually logging in? Why they were logging in? And then what did they do? So this is like breadcrumbs. It's going to create a trail. So if you do get compromised, you can kind of backtrack and reverse engineer what they did, where they accessed, and try to hopefully correct what they possibly did on your plan. And then also through high integrity add-on instructions, those AOIs, you're going to have the ability to generate a signature. And based on the signature, it's shown in the slide, provide some additional security. The signature will actually seal the add-on instruction from any modifications that aren't authorized. And then also it'll just add another layer of localized, more down at the device security. So this is all of these are all part of that whole defense in depth. Like an onion, you peel back each piece. The more roadblocks you throw in there, hopefully you can slow them down so you can get in there and pivot and react to their compromises that you might want to make on your system. Next, we're going to talk about component change detection. This will help you quickly verify the state of any key components that might have been changed while it was offline, the controllers. Also, there's a new tracking group setting. It's going to actually allow real granular tag, IO module, and routine changes kind of tracking. So if anything has been changed, the actual tracked group, you can go through and similar to individual, it'll give you a group signature change that you can verify that something actually happened to a group of devices you might be kind of monitoring. Next, we also have digital assigned firmware. So when you go out there and you get your firmware, this is actually put another piece of security on top of that. So you're not just getting it out and pulling it from anywhere. You're going to make sure who's putting the firmware in there and give a granular level of I'd say accountability to what's being applied out there on your network. You can see in here at the bottom, you put in the firmware and then whether it was signed or not. Next, we're going to talk on secure my network infrastructure. This is where you control access to the network and detect any unwanted access and activity that might be happening. This is through the validated architecture. So this is through Rockwell, Cisco, and Panduit's converged plant-wide Ethernet. More specifically here on the right, and I've also put links in it. So throughout the presentation, if you click on some of these links, it's going to give you a direct web page of some of the information. And in this case, we have deploying identity services within the converged plant-wide Ethernet, or CPWE. This is the design guide. This is a one-stop solution. It's going to really help streamline your policy management and help possibly reduce your operating costs. It's also going to allow you to kind of see all your users and devices and give you control access over a wired connection, the wireless, or even VPN connections out there on your corporate or industrial network. Also through secure traverse, the other design guide is securely traversing the IACS across IDMZ, their industrial demilitarized zone. This is that buffer. As you see here in the guide on the left, you have the enterprise zones, level 4 through 5 at the very top. You want to segment this from the industrial OT operational technology zone down at the very bottom. You want to put a kind of a level 3.5 in the middle and ensure there's no direct communication between the two. That they're going to have to go through this proxy, that there's no connections that'll go directly through. They'll kind of begin in the IT enterprise area, terminate in the IDMZ, start up again, and then come down to the OT environment. And that can be duplicated if you want traffic to go up. It's also going to give you that control to make sure traffic stays where it's needed. Only traffic that you want to have going between the two is actually allowed and monitored. Next, we're going to go into logical zoning. So as previously discussed when I talked about defense in depth, there's some key tenets in this, and logical zoning is part of that. That's the segmenting of your network. There's three kind of pieces that kind of go along with that, and whether you're an ISA, IEC, NIST, or Department of Homeland Security, two of them that they all share is network segmentation, defining zone-to-zone communications in that network segmentation, and then implementation of secure IDMZ. So with regards to zoning, you're going to segment your traffic based on specific zones, and then limit any kind of communication between zones, like I mentioned, between the IT and the OT area. So you're creating very similar to that IDMZ, but between all your different cell area zones. and you segment out your architecture. And what that helps is if you are compromised in any of your different cells, whether that's in levels 3 or levels 0 through 2 down in the cell area zone, or even in the enterprise, it's going to make it harder for them to pivot and access any of the other zones. So almost like the rooms in your house or in the office, you want locked doors. Somebody comes into the bedroom, you have the right locked door, they're not going to be able to continue on through to the other areas. More specifically, I'd say an office. Houses are locked one way, but very similar. Next, we're going to talk about secure communications through SIP communication, or SIP security. So SIP security, like I kind of touched on earlier, this is where you embed that certificate on the devices, very similar to the banking industry, and that's what it was based off, that they use the same thing. They've been using it for many years, and we've now kind of pushed this in and over to the industrial world. But what this does, it's going to give you the ability to kind of put security down at the final layer of defense, which is down at the device level. So you have policies, procedures, you have physical security, network security that we touched on, computer security, application security. And now if they get through all of this and you get down to the device, through SIP security, you can allow another level of security. So you can reject data that has been altered. That's the integrity of the data. You can reject messages that have been sent by untrusted people or untrusted devices. That's the authenticity of it. And then the ability to reject messages and request actions that aren't allowed. So this is the authorization. Also, in last week's webinar, I talked about the transport layer. There's TLS that's kind of going through here and doing communication protection. So TLS is for TCP handshakes. It's going to give a level of security that's using SSL. And then DTLS is used for any UDP communications at this level. Next is we're going to touch on the Stratix 5950 RA specific SIP categories. And what this is where we get into the deep packet inspection. So like I mentioned earlier, a firewall is going to block on a 5-tuple. Once again, that's your destination or source IP address, the MAC address, the port number, or the protocol being used. But once you open that drawbridge, you allow access. So if they are compromised at any point or what they're doing beyond that, you won't have any idea. But if you're using a device like the Stratix 5950 or higher up in the grapevine, possible Cisco ASA, you have the ability, if they have deep packet inspection, to use the SIP RA admin, SIP RA read, or SIP write commands to actually go in there and block the flashing of firmware, block or allow, or even monitoring, as well as any of these other areas. You want to change IP addresses, if they just want to read an HMI string or maybe write something. All of these areas can be either allowed, audited, monitored, or denied. Next, we're going to touch on content protection. So through content protection, this is going to help with the viewing, editing, and use of specific pieces of control equipment. Here we have license-based source protection. So this is where you actually have a license on a USB key, and it's going to ensure that for you to do any changes on add-on instructions or routines, you're going to need this USB plugged into your workstation. Also, licenses are going to be managed by content owners via some web-based app, and it inserts that certificate or license on the key to ensure it kind of locks it down. And then moving to the next level of content protection, we have execution protection. And what this is going to kind of allow, it's going to allow another level of security metrics. So you put this in, and without this SD card with a license on it, it won't allow you to have access into that controller. So in essence, no card, no game. You can't do anything. You're going to kind of be denied right at the very front. And then in summary, just want to touch on again, through factory talk security and source protection, you really are able to kind of lock down at that device level, along with all the other tiers that we kind of discussed a little bit earlier. Next is the access control and policy management. This is where we control who, what, where, and when access is allowed into which application and devices. Thin Manager, this is a terrific solution that we have. It's a software solution. It's not the devices on the right. A lot of people think the VersaView devices on the right are the Thin Manager. Thin Manager is actually a software. It's a content manager that makes use of devices like the clients over here, Thin Manager clients on the right. And it helps with productivity, visualization, security, and mobility. But more specifically to this conversation, it's going to help you out for security because there's no intellectual information on these devices. These are zero operating system. There's no hard drive in it. So if somebody stole it from your plant floor, there's nothing in it. It's going to exist somewhere else, and it'll just be a big paperweight or a brick. Also, the delivery of the applications on this, it's not wide open for a hacker to get into. You can be specific when you go through the management console and specifically dictate what applications you give access to. You can base that on the user, based on the location of that user, and based on the devices that they're trying to access. And any combination of those three, you can either permit full access, read, or write execution permissions. And then also, Thin Manager by default will not allow any USB devices to work. So if somebody came in like back in the Stuxnet days and threw a USB drive on there, it wouldn't have been compromised. So if you want more information on Thin Manager, let me know. I can come out and or virtually give a kind of presentation on that as well. Also, with CyberSecurity zones, you have the ability to set up these, and this goes back to the zoning that we talked about earlier through CyberSecurity. You not only have the ability to set up certificates on each of the devices, but you're going to have to put up zones. And in this case, we have an engineering workstation zone. We have an L85 zone or an L75 zone. You can name them however you want, but you're going to go through and set up conduits that are going to allow, and you're going to dictate based on your policies and procedures, who can have access, what zones can have access to what access. Is it one way, is it bidirectional, and what kind of access that they have. But really, this is through CyberSecurity zones. This is going to help you out with another level of security. So I know that's a lot of information we went through. There's not a lot of time left, but I just wanted to kind of point out some services that we have. The first two slides are going to be services that you would want to kind of do before an attack actually happened. And with specific asset identification services, a lot of these are actually pushed down to one source, because we're the distributor for Rockwell, but we have people like Sergio and myself that are here to kind of help you out. So we have the authorized service provider program that is done by the distributor or here at one source. We have installed base evaluations, which is going to look at your hardware, software, and your network in your panels and do inventory counts and give you a great report you can kind of go off of. There's security posture surveys, and this will actually be done by me, where I'll come out and I can span a port. Hopefully you have managed switches out there, and we can go through and get the actual traffic that's running, work with Rockwell to analyze that traffic and come back with another report for you, and I would actually be doing that. Also, the comprehensive network assessment. I'm also the authorized service provider once again, so if you're interested in getting an assessment of what's going on your network, you just don't know what you have, so you don't really know how to protect it, let me know and I can come out and do a network audit of your information. It'll look at your physical, your logical, as well as your security implementation, and it can kind of grade it based on ISA, IEC, NIST, and DHS's recommendation. And then also asset inventory. We also have migration planning services. We have software services for patch management. So get a hold of us. We can really help you out with that asset identification and migration services. But this is really the first step. For cybersecurity, if you don't know what you have, and not only something that you just wrote down, but an active inventory of the software and devices and users that are accessing your network, it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to truly defend it. Next, this is also another countermeasure we do before, but we have perimeter hardening services. So everything from firewall standardization, policy and procedure management assistance, we can help out with. For IDMZ deployment, this is that buffer between your IT and your OT. We have comprehensive designs and implementations we can insist on. And then IDMZ functional specification documentation. And then endpoint protection, so USB cleaning, application whitelisting, any anti-malware management assistance you need, through to virtual server stand-ups we have. And then last but not least, we have what do you do during, actually this isn't last, I'm sorry, we have what do you do during an attack. So this is your software deployment configuration services, threat detection management services, and due to time, I'm going to kind of jump ahead to backup and recovery. So here's a group of services that we have through Rockwell that if you need some factory talk asset center services, policy creation, user management, we can help out. Virtual backup management, whether it's on or off-prem, and then on-site field labor recovery services, we can assist with that. And one last area I'd like to touch on is product registration. So if you haven't heard about this, if you bought a Stratix switch, an 8000, 5700, Armor Stratix 5700, or Stratix 5400 or 5410, since July 1st of 2019, you can go through and register that device, and it's going to give you an extended warranty. It's also going to give you access to documented tools, life cycle report to let you know where it is in its life cycle and any upgrade paths, as well as risk and security to ensure that you know you got a verifiable version of Rockwell's hardware software. So that's all I have. Some other useful links. We're going to go ahead and unmute the lines. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Adrian, good job. And yeah, there are a couple of questions on the chat. The first one, it's about the firmware. If there is a compatibility matrix on our website to allow select the right firmware. And yes, there is. If you Google RCPDP Rockwell or Rockwell firmware, or reach out to me, and then absolutely we can guide you through that. It is very simple to use. The second question is that if we're going to share the presentation, absolutely we will share. We will send a link to the recording session. And there's another one, Adrian, for you. I see that there is a whole lot on cybersecurity. Is there some type of antivirus software for the PLC? And maybe I can answer that. So okay. Yeah, there is no software for the antivirus software for the PLC. I mean, it would just follow under the standard antivirus software for your computer, but the antivirus software itself on the PLC, it's basically what Adrian talked about, securing your code on multiple ways via firmware, via the USB card, things like that.
Yeah, and the reason for that is it's not specifically for that environment. So you put those other roadblocks that we mentioned in there, content protection, digitally signed, updates, all of that is part of that defense in depth. The actual antivirus, that would run on a PC. That's the environment for that. So even things like that, you want to be careful by pushing that out onto a plant floor. So let us know. We can have a deeper discussion on that. I know just due to time, this is kind of a more touch point just to kind of let you guys know some of the base services that we have to help you out with cybersecurity. But please reach out to Sergio. Please reach out to me. The lines are unmuted. If we didn't answer anything, but please feel free to speak up.
Actually, there's another question: is how do I get help with cybersecurity in the future? You can reach out directly to Adrian Lupola or myself, or you can reach out directly via your field sales representative, and he will get you in contact with the right person.
Yeah, definitely. This is all of interest, and I know security, it's really hard, especially if it's optimized. But if you do this stuff up at the beginning, especially you can see through Rockwell services, this is something that you can use yourself. So anywhere that we can't fill in the blank with the Rockwell services, we have access to Cisco. So depending, even if you're on the IT side, I have a direct line of communication with the Cisco side, as well as the Panduit side and all the different partners. So anything on the OT side, anything on the IT side, please get a hold of me. I'd love to come out and talk to you or jump on a web conference call. All right, any other questions in the queue, Sergio?
I don't see any other question at this point, Adrian.
All right, perfect. Well, with that being said, I'd just really like to thank everybody. Hopefully you got, I know it's a short, condensed 30 minutes with a lot of detailed info. We will be sharing out the slide deck as well as the networking from last week. So any questions, feel free to reach out to Sergio, myself. We don't have Matt Wright on the line. He helps out in Orange County. Any PLC questions, feel free to reach out to Matt or myself. I help out in Orange County as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Be safe.
Thank you.